Hi all, and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. Right, we've got a lot to cover tonight, and I think I'm going to lose my voice by the end of it. There's a lot of stuff we've covered this year. And we're going to begin tonight with April. And the reason I played that song, that last song, Time Keeps on Slipping, because I did a piece in April, and it said there was an ongoing issue currently to do with time slips and time jumps that have been occurring with increasing frequency. And this is down to the clowns messing to try and go back in time and reclaim the covenant again. Remember that word, as it came up later on in the year. It hasn't and will not work, but it has created distortions in what we perceive as time. And a warning to the clowns was given. This is going against natural law, and punishments are now fairly steep. These times are not like the past. Whatever you did, well, they used to do whatever they wished with zero consequences. Those days are now over, period. And we will not warn you again. We will just act. Well, that time jumps has been continuing. I experienced a 7-minute glitch just before Christmas, where time went back 7 minutes and then went forward 7 minutes. Right. SSP in April are trying to gain access to the on-world portals via selective mountains dotted around the world. In fact, all mountains are portals, but some carry a higher purpose, shall we say. And that was because of their desire to fix or obtain more of the advanced tech which they once had access to. They don't now. Underground beings are still holding firm and blocking them gaining access, and it's expected they will hold that stance as they are kind of excited by the fact they are close to freedom as well. Many of them down there have been slaves. Then I did a piece, why the wall is being built, and there was elements in it that kind of shocked people, some. And this obviously is still ongoing. It will be a contentious point. It's not really an issue, but it's being used as a smokescreen, shall we say. So what is the purpose and the reasons for the wall? Well, the purpose is to prevent mercenaries, acronym-led groups created by our own agencies, drug gangs, gangs intent on and that live for violence, which are later used to do the dirty work of others in a plea bargain when they're caught, the sex trade and trafficking, child porn industry, child human slavery selling, and the worst aspects of this is people are being used for snuff movies, dissecting them live or otherwise for organ harvesting, which are then sold onto the hospitals for between $90,000 and $225,000, depending on which organ, extracting children's adrenal chrome for the Kool-Aid juice, the elite drink that helps with life longevity. And if you think that lot is bad enough, the worst thing, depending on your perspective, is some of them are used for food. Masks of illusion reveal truth, but is that truth comfortable or not for the host or those around? So what is the mask of illusion that I first brought up around 2 years ago now, with warnings it would eventually lead to something resembling all-out chaos? All people wear masks of sorts to cover up shortfalls they don't like others to see. Observers will see it regardless of the mask, and this is a key to psychology. But over the last 5 to 10 years, many have demanded the truth about themselves, this world, and how it all operates. And the biggest question is, how deep, wide and long have the lies gone? Well, that depends on how far and how many rabbit holes you have gone down. We've been down more than most with this show, as I'm able to cover quite a considerable number of topics all in the one show. But I did warn the masks would start to come down, and we would see a lot more being exposed on all levels. But also warned you would see it within yourself and also those around you. Masks are not just coming down for the cabal, but all of us. Some will ask why. The reason being is you cannot demand the truth of others and not be truthful within yourself. It's not how it works. Selective truth is what they have done and used on us, and the time for revealing the full truth is now upon us and underway. Back in April, there was 4 marine accidents in a week, and that was part of the fun and games. One of Trump's helicopters crashed, and one had a failed engine. Then there was 2 fires at the Trump Tower. White powder mailed to Ivanka. Battleships playing bumper cars or bumper boats. And it was said at the time, none of a coincidence, and this is all out war. We then did a piece based on an investigation by a group called Fusion, and they found that 80% of women and girls crossing into America by the way of Mexico are raped during their journey. That's still ongoing. The first mention of the hideous reptilian family known as the Rothschilds. There will be more, and we will have music for them later on. And the latest Rothschild plan back in April failed again. It was to dump treasury notes and bonds and collapse the central bank, plus enhance their own missions. They tried to gain treasuries for free from Russia and China. That failed. Then they called in the treasuries that is in one of the federal accounts, but that was stopped as they couldn't prove that they own them, because they don't. The trust does. Reality is they own nothing of note anymore. They lost that when they lost the trust, and the trust is not going to allow them blights on humanity back into the game. Rothschilds also tried to claim the money the trust sent to the Treasury in April. That failed again also. IMF is in total panic, of which we'll find out why. IMF has been threatening all central banks, presidents and prime ministers this week, as a full-on investigation is being undertaken now to find any central bankers or ordinary bankers who have taken bribes from the UN, the IMF or the Hughes-led World Bank. So part of the investigation is the trust sold the UN. This is what solicited the IMF, threatening everyone. This was back in April. The UN owed substantial debts to the trust and had no intentions of paying them back. And so the trust took over, and the UN and all of its subsidiaries was sent back to all the nations who are part of the UN. The properties of the UN is in foreclosure for non-payment of lesser fees by the Rothschilds, Rockefellers and Asian families. Now the sale comes with a complete file that was sent to all nations of the orders done and the misuse by the UN organisation at the same time. A total of 108,000 files of intel against the operations of the UN was handed over to all nations as part of the selling, and an equal share of the dividends that were contained within the UN account all returned to each nation that were in the UN. The video that the NYPD still sits on of Anne and Huma bedding, and some emails were released, and there was one in particular that was put on the show, which was from Anne to Huma Abedin, who's their real love partner. Mr. Let's Stain the Dress in the White House. That's a sad issue. And Anne wrote this: please bring my hammer and toy I like to use to Comet tonight. That's Comet Ping Pong. Swing by the office and grab my inhaler. Nothing gets my heart going like a sacrifice night. And that entity still operates. Also, we found out more information about the Clintons than their time in the White House, where Anne stole $200,000 of furniture, china and artwork upon exiting the White House and was made to return it. Point is, why wasn't she arrested? Then we go on to, there was a lot of furore about Iran, and it's nothing to do with nuclear weapons and everything to do with black market oil. Nothing to do with nuclear weapons. I'll repeat that because it's nothing. It's all a smokescreen. The deal that pays the head imam in Iran, Bibi, that's Netanyahu, Bush, and Saudi Aramco are all involved, has been going on for years, and they split the profits of $25 a barrel of oil. For the last 20 years, 90% of the world's oil is sold on the black market at $25 a barrel or less. And yeah, even with the prices coming down, it's at 46 now. So that's pure profit on top. The actual cost of making a barrel is $1 to $2. And that's the fictional price we see on the commodities markets, is so they can drive up the price of food and gas for the consumer. And that whole market is rigged. But even though they get it so cheap at $25 a barrel and selling it at 50 or more, now they only want to sell the oil for free or steal the oil for free. So that's what was going on in Iran. They no longer didn't want to pay $25. They wanted to pay nothing. Just collect it all. In other words, what they did in Iraq. Now, what also happened is Mr. Netanyahu got cut out of the last Iranian oil deal. Oops. TikTok, Netanyahu, he's in trouble. Same week, following the trusts dealing with the UN and the IMF subsidiary, the UK, operated by the Blue Dragons, proposed to many African countries to become part of the Commonwealth. The ones who are not currently anyway, there's some already in it. And the ones who are being asked to renew their contract. This is because the trust found out that their agreements had all expired, and Kim went and told all the African leaders. So the UK called them all in, and they all went to a meeting in the UK. And they are trying to make their currency the British pound, Zimbabwe being one of them. Not no more than that. So it's like switching one for the other, and this has a number of issues for different people. One, the African countries would be rolled into the Crown and the Rothschilds, and two, their assets would also come under the Commonwealth and shared wealth. Yeah, you all know how that works by now. We share our wealth with them, they collect it and use it against us, and also fail to disseminate it back to the people. And this will leave numbers of people stuck with Zim notes should it go ahead. As it said at the time, it's not going ahead. I can tell you that 100% guarantee it won't be going ahead. Zimbabwe will not be revaluing their note for at least 5 years minimum, if ever, and they're unlikely to go with the British pound either. So if the people want payouts on Zims, they need to contact Chinese elders if you can find one, or the Rothschilds, Maybe you can all go and bombard David Rothschild's Twitter and ask him where the Zim payouts are. More on him later, that clown. Echelon, aka Five Eyes, has been run out of Australia. And for those of you who want any insight into that, there's a rather short but decent show on Netflix called Pine Gap. And you'll find out some really interesting stuff within that show if you listen closely. So Echelon is still spying on Americans and also trying to siphon funds out of the trust, which we found out and dealt with. And for those who are unaware of it, Five Eyes, which is actually 9 eyes, unlike a cat that has 9 lives, this type of spy has 9 eyes. And they all spy on each other's country and then disseminate the intel to each other. The reason they do that is the laws in each country prevents, like for argument's sake, or supposed to prevent, America spying on Americans. So then they get the Russians or the Australian group to spy and then pass the information back, and they all do it intermittently. Rudy Giuliano joins the Trump legal team. Will it whitewash Giuliano's role in coordinating the removal of steel to sell to the Chinese, human parts included, during the first day of 9/11? Mayor Giuliani oversaw the illegal destruction of the 9/11 crime scene and is criminally liable for the deaths of hundreds of emergency workers for not passing on prior warnings about the collapses of the Twin Towers. It's no wonder then that the fire department of New York so passionately detest Giuliani for his actions in disgracing their fallen brothers and also covering up the 9/11 crime. Some of you will remember me referencing a group known as the White Helmets, helmets being the operative word. Those in the UK will get that meaning more. Many were saying that these are the group are formerly known as the White Hats. And my comment was, yes, the pointy white hats. Well, a report has come out about how much this group has generated via certain funding from 2016 to the tune of $123 million, having received funds via the US State Department, Deep State, 3 branches of the UK government, the German government, the Dutch government, the Danish government, Qatar, which is Obama and his Muslim Brotherhood crew, and Japan. Crowdfunding and website donations for services in Syria, all very Blackwater that. But 2 key aspects of this report that jumped out. All the money was being funneled via a Dutch NGO company called Mayday Rescue. And also the White Helmets received $2.4 million from a fund known as Joe Cox. Now, people in the UK will be familiar with that name, but Joe Cox was a politician in the UK who was shot and stabbed multiple times to death a couple of years ago. Why is her fund being used for the mercenary White Helmet group? Solution section, or proposals that go into the essence to be absorbed. And the first up is important to us all who listen to this show and many others. And this was the first time I mentioned it. I will mention it in more detail later in the year. And I would like to propose to Mr. Trump a dedicated truth channel, primetime TV, not using celebrities or so-called stars or coven-promoted goons within our community, but average people in the alternative community to be recognised for their role in exposing this truth movement and subsequent exposure of the rogue elements. As without all of us deciding something is clearly not right with this world and then finding it was correct, and took steps to learn and expose it all, the controllers would have wiped us all out by now. Didn't Mr. Trump mention a truth channel later on in the year? Oh my. And then it gave a solution to the Western world housing crisis, which is reaching epidemic proportions when what looks like a kid's built house in Toronto that I posted this week in the middle of nowhere, that doesn't fit into anything, is selling for $3 million, and it's about 12 foot wide. Beyond stupid. And this piece I put in as we're all getting tired of the deliberate boom and bust. And yes, some may have gained from the booms, but far too many lost from the controlled bust. And what have we ended? The housing boom and bust and made all homes affordable to the many, but preferably to the all. And the suggestion was to make all house prices based on the cost to build it, plus 10% builder's cost. And reviews could be added for improvements to homes like additions, pools, extra garages can be adjudicated but are rigid in a price range. So let's say your home costs $100,000 to build, plus the 10% builder's fee, so your home would always cost $110,000 in value. Will go up, won't go down. And yet you've bought it for $250,000, but if the new mortgage is dropped to $110,000, that makes it not only more affordable for the most people, but the extra money in your pocket then goes into the spending money in your own community, which then helps others. So most people would gain from it with something like that. You know, I'm sure people can come up with other ideas surrounding it, but that's just the gist of it. So the ones who have paid $250,000 would suddenly see their mortgage drop to the level of the house built. So, you know, it's not as if you've lost out. May. We're now into May. And we were kind of pushed into fully exposing the role of Jesper and the Kingdom of Mana crew in May. We tried to avoid it, but it reached awkward proportions where we had to put our side out and let people know what was really going on. There was a lot of concerns about the Kingdom of Mana, and it didn't really fit in. Well, those concerns were right, but Jesper and the Kingdom of Mana was dropped from the trust and came in October of 17. Yeah, 17. But here we are, 7 months later, and we did an expose. Jesper Ellerman, who had changed his name first to King Julius, all very Roman Empire that, but then went one step further and changed his name to two angels, Archon or otherwise, Michael and Uriel, which begs the question, why, you know? But then we found out about what happened with the Manus Island, which is off Papua New Guinea, which was originally declared sovereign by Kim as the trustee, and was rescinded later when we found out more details. And the need to find out what the... we spoke to the government in Papua New Guinea regarding the details of what was put forward by Jesper, that they were going to take over the island and were going to build some sort of future centre, and the plans for it. And the government weren't too complimentary and were unable to provide any validity to what he had planned. There were no contracts and no signatures, absolutely nothing. And I asked people who didn't believe me to go and check for themselves, go and speak to the Papua New Guinea government. Jesper then tipped his hat even further in May, which is what facilitated this piece, as he became the head of the RV program after promising his team, the Rothschilds and the RV crew, he had the codes to the trust, except as proven over the weekend and into Monday, he didn't. You see, the issue with the codes is anyone can say they have the codes. I actually have the codes for the trust, but can I use them? No. So they resorted to hacking again, which subsequently failed again, only this time the system fired back and fried all their servers. It was also transpired that there were actually more than one Jesper, the real Jesper, and a guy called Peter. Oops. So the hacking took place between 12:01 and 12:46 Eastern Standard Time. This was in May. The whole financial system was shut down, and this then allowed Kim and the team full access to what had been going on, and then to find the evidence of criminality within the system and also who perpetrated it. Various names familiar and not had their accounts frozen and criminal funds seized and removed to other accounts in ready for returning to the rightful owners of the funds. And whilst this was going on, the system was completely overhauled and cleared of any backdoors, rogue software, all flags into the system on persons or groups. And this plays into the targeted individuals theme. Anyway, all those were removed from the system, and rogue data storage was also removed from the system while it was down as well. The trust account, which was off ledger due to being blocked, was then transferred and installed into the system as on ledger and subsequently live. Whilst ongoing, the Five Eyes system known as Echelon was completely frozen. The next part of the operation involved no flagging of any person or group connected with the accounts that will be deposited from the trust into the project funds accounts. We are having issues where my account was being flagged, Tank's account was being flagged, and a number of other accounts that the funds for projects was going to go to was being flagged. And the reason for doing it is this will prevent people turning up at the bank with fake FBI badges issued by rogue agencies at the time to attempt to block or cause issues with the people connected to the accounts. And after it, an official warrant will be required with two types of ID of the individual acquiring the warrant, which then logs them as accountable if the warrant is based on rogue evidence or for nefarious reasons. So there will be no more fake FBI calling in favours from the Department of Homeland Security anymore to issue fake warrants. Next one, attempts were made by the clowns and their legion of hackers to break in and steal a few test accounts set up and delivered by the trust in this week in May. They tried to rename the accounts and then steal them. And you know what happens next? That failed. Then they tried to leverage those accounts to Hong Kong, Shanghai Exchange, head of the RV people, that particular bank. This previously had no effects or consequences of actions. That has now changed, as we said earlier, as the system recognises the person attempting to raid the accounts, and what happens next will please everyone bar them. The system accesses their own personal accounts, i.e. bank accounts, and shuts it down. Oops. The NATO head has been sending 75 to 78% of what is being collected from allied nations to the Rothschilds. NATO. All funds were able to be recovered and have been returned to the respective nations. This was done by Kim, and criminal files have been sent to all nations involved. Upon further investigations, the Rothschilds were also found to be funneling funds out of the UN also, and the UN has a new temporary president, and she doesn't take lightly or kindly to those actions, and has returned, that she is Kim, by the way, has returned the $50 billion membership fees to each country involved in the UN. Under the original charter of the UN, there was actually no membership fees for being a participant in the UN. So basically these fees were just another slush fund for the Rothschild et al., a bit like the Social Security account, a bit like the IRS income tax account, you name it, and the NATO account. And these were also refunded to the countries, and some of the recovered funds of their contributions made to the UN also was returned back to the countries. Then we did, there was a big advertisement of the Clinton family promoting things, and so we did this piece back in May. So Anne, along with the aged patients Bill and their hideous offspring Chelsea, want people to attend a $100,000 gathering to promote all things Clinton Foundation this week in May. And my comments were 100,000 to sit and fawn over them and their depravity. Are people that stupid? Or just maybe the Clintons are short of money? Only this time there's no Bush family funds to bail them out. Oops. That became more prevalent as the year went on. So Trump cancelled another deal, this time in Iran. And the Iran deal was less about nuclear weapons, as we'd said earlier, and more about the slush funds being channeled through Iran by Obama and also Anne. For those of you who are new to the show, Anne is Hillary. Android. 1.6 billion in cash was involved in that deal, with no apparent oversight or questioning until now. And the full disclosure on Iran will lead to high-level arrests eventually. The 1.6 billion in cash was all super notes, by the way, and was recovered. Ecuador, as the latest in the news, was sent funds by the trust to kickstart their economy along with Argentina. And what happened next is the IMF sent some stormtroopers to the central banks and threatened them to not receive the funds. This also applied in some African countries as well, and some are backing down and some are not. And I asked at its time that all in Africa and all in South America stood up to these people and their organisations and banned them from the country altogether, or just arrest them. We also found an underground network of thieves in May, and so what happens is they were putting their notification number on accounts in banks. Then when the client goes to make a transfer of the funds, they notify their stooge in the bank to transfer it straight to their account. So far, the trust had found several accounts which had received funds, all linked to the Rothschilds or known Dragon family members. So people's bank accounts were being rerouted to the Rothschilds or the Dragon families. And this is going on all over the world. And they do this through a phone network, which is why I keep warning people, please don't do online banking from your phone. It's beyond stupid. I know it's convenient, but convenience, like magic, comes with a price. And this was the same way they were stealing from governments as well, using a network of people who were working in the central banks. And this is what they started doing only days after we closed all the back doors. But that was detected within hours also, and that mode went on to be blocked as well. Then we had more stuff about the bloody RV, and known as regurgitated vomit. I think we're all sick of it by now, which is why I stopped mentioning it as the year went on. You know, RV tried, RV failed. Repeat, repeat, repeat. So for the cabal, and it is the cabal, to pull off the RV, they would require $4.25 quadrillion. That's 15 zeros. Quadrillion in assets to do so. Except there isn't that much in assets to begin with. Now, outside of the ridiculous leveraging or dodgy derivatives betting, which is just creating the illusion, it's actually impossible. And what they have to do is put up 10% as an asset base going forward. The 4.25 quadrillion is the 10%. Now, due to the new quantum system that is designed to not cheat into oblivion and make all the public pay for their stupidity, 4.25 quadrillion equates to roughly 40 years, 40, global GDP. 40 years of what everyone spends in 1 year. And people seriously think that's going to still go ahead. Truth, they say, is stranger than fiction. In their world of illusion, it is, yes. May is the time that I made a vacation trip to meet Kim. And this is the next story, and we'll have a song afterwards. Following another attempt to snatch or eliminate Kim, of which there have been many, perpetrated by either Anne, Obama, Cheney or Bush, I thought I would share a funny outcome to one of those events that took place in May. Now, Cheney sent 4 armed goons and requested 7 others from Washington as backup to try and track her and me down, and descended on a particular place they think where she was located. Well, those goons, like the ones that went before them, paid a heavy price for their stupidity. But the funny aspect of it all was Cheney has a vacation home in a region. He has a few actually, but this particular region in America, and some of the team decided to borrow a bulldozer and completely flattened Cheney's home to the ground. What a classic that. Cheney, we thought at the time was innie, but it appears it was a double. But Cheney then fled to his 8-level bunker home in Montana, and at this point in May had not been seen since. So we're going to have a song for Mr. Cheney. Hope you all like that one. Next, we'll carry on with May. The SSP, it came to light. We're trying to build new time portals, particularly in the southwest region of America. But all other access to get out of here and also gain access to the inner world is now cut off to them permanently. So they were trying to create a new element, which is what a lot of the mining below the ground is all about. It's not to do with gold, really. And to get around the closed portals, building labs in the hills will not end well. They were warned and they didn't listen, and they paid a heavy price in a couple of regions anyway. SSP will be no surprise to most who are aligned with the rogue elements within Langley, particularly Langley 2. And following certain meetings with Baines last week and previous months, they are now under a shoot-to-kill policy for interfering in regions that they shouldn't be in and trying to gain access to places that they are not allowed anymore. The varying greys, at least 3 versions of them, along with the tall whites, some gins, aquatics and raptors, are no longer allowing them access to their world underground anymore. And should they do so, the non-terrestrial groups down there can shoot to kill, as SSP entry into their domain is considered an act of war and against the peace treaty, which is now imposed. And a warning was sent out to the SSP. They need to quit their games, and the naval group supporting it. Yes, you in Norfolk, Virginia. We'll have more about them later in the show. Gins and greys all appeared to me on a trip in May, and I went to deliver a message, and they came out in good numbers. And the sight of the dark gins coming out, not in black form but grey, is a sign to me, once I had time to ponder on it, that things are really changing on and in this planet and beyond. Where there was division, there is now a common goal shared amongst many groups working and joining together, and the desire to not continue the eons of years of war, and peace on many fronts is now breaking out. And from this person's perspective, it was a joy to behold. The races were brought up and destroying each other over land, resources and trade, and are now seeing and feeling the benefits of the discourse that has gone on over the last decade especially, and a realisation we all want the same things in life, and we can go forward better and quicker with a sharing and caring attitude and also demeanour. Now, the truth that has been relayed to many races has hit them heavy as well, and the lies ran deep throughout all of them, and the usual rhetoric of finger-pointing and apportioning blame has now given way to a productive discourse, which also continues to this day. In May, the Chinese faction, or the Asian faction I should say, have hired Eric Prince, Mr. Blackwater, to work on their behalf for what they have sold to him as getting their money back. And unfortunately, Mr. Prince had no luck trying to get their money back, as they think, which was basically Mr. Prince was tasked with getting the money out of the trust and getting it back to the Rothschilds. That failed, and but the Asian faction were getting a bit pissy with Mr. Prince and gave him an ultimatum that he had until the 24th of May to complete his task, of which he failed. Hillary has realised she probably will never gain access to the system nor be able to steal from the banks anymore, so yesterday she decided to take the hard assets, or tried to anyway, and thought she would start with the BLM, Bureau of Land Management. She tried to claim ownership over the BLM and tried to execute on contracts that she had signed before the election. Essentially, for those who don't know, she had signed over in the August or September before the 2016 election all in-ground assets of America to the Chinese faction. They weren't pleased when she didn't win, trust me. Anyway, Anne has now found out that she has no authority over the BLM, and neither does the UN, because Trump pulled out of the Paris Treaty / agreement. That was the reason why. It's been found out that the NSA via Stingray Tech had arms everywhere into every bank legally, the NSA. Quite how they managed that is down to politicians, no oversight. And the team also found all the illegal tentacles in the system too. All have been dealt with, so they at least at this point can go back in legally, and any further attempts would be illegal and also actionable. We revealed about the spyware during all these finding all tentacles, not only going into the banks, but they were going everywhere. And the spying data cables was put in the show in May, and it was found it was on phones, TV and Wi-Fi, and that is being addressed. That's ongoing, but we have that much to cover. We can't keep on top of everyone or all the different hats we have to wear at this moment, and we just gained a new one this week. We'll see how that goes. Also an NSA issue, and no surprise that the NSA own Comcast and also CNN, Clinton News Network. Apple has their own spyware riddled with malware and Trojans known as iSpy, and we were trying to address that as well back in May. So in April we had all the budget issue going on, and suddenly the budget was funded and kicked down the road for 6 months till the end of September. And the trust sent $700 billion to keep the government going and the country, of which a portion of it was for the wall. And on the 17th of April, 400 billion of the 700 billion was siphoned out of a back door due to their old system. And the funds were then funneled via NATO. No surprise there. Now, as a backstory, we did tell Mr. Trump how to protect the funds. Unfortunately, the government team didn't listen. They're listening now, trust me. And so essentially out of the 700 billion, the government was left with the bare minimum to cover for the government to operate on, 300 billion. And this type of interference has now been stopped. Measures were taken for the future that it won't be allowed to do so again. As for the 400 billion, Kim located it all, and it all went back into the trust, so they gained nothing. Then we had issues of banks, and the public were having issues with banks, and the reason is the banks were then all trying to reset their systems, which was then trying to install the back doors back that we'd taken out. And reports also show that the Treasury and the NSA was resetting at the same time, basically installing their old system with all the back doors and the siphons and the clearance accounts. But it was actually helpful to us for them to reset, because the new firewalls we'd installed in the quantum system that month immediately began to do a scan and detect for interference, and so the system learned what they were doing. So it was actually helpful to Kim and I, and their resetting actually set them back even further. And resetting won't help them bank or computer wise, but what is required is a full resetting of their mindset. Fly straight and we all prosper. continue illusion of control stupidity and you will fail. CNN. Ratings were reported as plummeting down to 835,000 compared to MSNBC of 1.4 million and Fox of 2.35 million. CNN was down 25% in the past month. This was in May. And then we did the From Russia with Love series 1 and 2. It's the two shows I'm most proud of, and was staggering in many ways. History revision in particular of how technology is not new, enlightened beings and humans working together to help other races, teachers of light and dark, and although there was elements in it, I was pleased at the time that no one flagged the piece up as being potentially racist, particularly with reference to the sub-grey race, which is now known as the Jewish peoples, Khazarian elements anyway. And I said at the time we must go beyond the labelled boxes and call poor behaviour out regardless of which particular box. And the term Aryan put it into its proper light. Was both Jesus and Mary Aryan? Was the question asked. Given it was known Jesus had, or the entity known as Jesus, which is actually Radomir, who was Rus. Some churches, older churches, depict Jesus with, or Radomir, with blue eyes, and Mary, blonde hair, blue eyes, Aryan. Not the Nazis Aryan, which they tried to discredit. That was setting you up for what took place in all the Slovakia region 30 years later, next war, Yugoslavia, Serbia, all those countries. That was your Aryan group, and that's why they were denigrating that history then. They always do things ahead of time. And of course, India's history was completely rewritten in that show, as all of it was copied from the Vedic texts, Mahabharata and all them. We also found out that communism is a political theory derived from Karl Marx, advocating class war and leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs. Except Karl Marx was not Russian. 70 to 90 million of a nation, Russia, wiped out in one generation. Absolute genocide, we found out in that show. And essentially all the cream of the people. And it took to run a country. And this type of political operations has been replayed over and over again, and it's become a cancer on this planet, and one we must stop. So we're going to have a song now which won't be familiar, and I hope you all like it. It's a Rus song. That was a Rus song, Arkona Slavsia. I hope you enjoyed that. Right, we're going to go into June now. And we opened June with a memo circulating through HSBC Bank and other institutions to not transfer any money at all to America. They're still trying to do that. Rothschilds and other goons think they can starve us out. And the message to them, well, you know what, we don't need Rothschilds and your ilk either, so they can go and F themselves with their threats, and the world's waking up to their illusions. And then the Rothschildians decided that they have built a quantum system and announced it all to the clowns on the alt media, and they all bought into it, except they don't. And the machine was in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, of which the Rothschildians and the SSP are allowed the 6 floors. Below that is the others, and they will not allow them any further anymore. They used to go all the way down. I think it's 13 floors in Wright Patterson. And the Rothschilds were saying they own and run the financial system, or so they were telling all the RV people anyway. We know different, do we not? And so they were offering this new quantum system, financial system, and they said you can all access it by giving the Rothschildians $30 million each to access it. Yeah, right. Pull the other one, Roths. Like the RV, that failed as well. Miss, or Mrs. or whatever it is, Anna Von Reitz was promoting this platform on her blog, and that tells you all you need to know about her and her hidden agendas, even if they're not as hidden as they are now, as they were then. So then we issued, which went around the dark web, which is where the Rothschildians and the RV crew hang out mainly. And we put out live on air a challenge to the Rothschilds, whereby they use their quantum system and Kim uses the trust quantum system, and you can present your systems together, and then we can all find out which one is true and which one is not, which one works and which one doesn't. And we offered it live on TV. Subsequently, the Rothschilds ignored it. Then we have the issues of banks and credit card systems going down in June, after they were trying to reinstall their backdoors into the system again. And they have tried it with many banks globally, and some in New Zealand in particular was mentioned. New Zealand is a particular, or the stronghold of the SSP. So the banks haven't lost all their clearance accounts, and these are the side accounts that they use to make vast quantities of money via our funds. And what happens is when you transfer money through a banking system, the flow of cash is not direct A to B, as in buyer and seller. It goes into a vast side chamber, in essence, which generates vast quantities of funds, and then they filter it through the system and release it, or as shown with the trust transfers, hold it back or try to keep it. And this was a massive issue. But it wasn't just the trust who was being brushed off with the transfers, it started to escalate with regular accounts also. Excuses the banks were given of wires are not ready, wires were not processed, wires never arrived. More like wired money was transferred into a Wall Street fast-track hedge fund bet, which is exactly what was happening, where they use our collective money, manipulate markets, and then use our funds to generate more funds. So this was another further sign of their desperation to cream funds from everywhere. And we asked the question why. It's because as we said to you many times at the time, this is June, they are failing and flailing. Now the object of the new system, which essentially Kim's and the team have rewritten the whole banking system altogether. And the new system is designed to be direct A to B live banking. So a receiver has their money for goods and services instantly and not wait until banks have collected and used their money to garner interest and or decide to send it or not. And this is why you've had to wait for checks to clear. The checks are cleared upon signing them. Not going through banks, they're cleared when you sign them. And they keep it and use it for their own ends. The same also applies for wire transfers, and it all adds up to billions of dollars outside of the banking system. So the team took advantage of them playing games and trying to reset the system. As with them doing a reset, it flags up all the anomalies within the system for you and then eliminates it, which is what we did. So we gave thanks to all the banks for trying to reset their systems, as the reset of the systems to implement new viruses or backdoors does not work anymore, and a reboot sends the system into seek and destroy mode. Oops. That's the quantum system then goes into seek and destroy when they add other bits into it. So following all that, the system flagged up the side accounts, and we managed to locate all of the clearance accounts in every bank. And what happens next is we swept up all the clearance accounts, emptied every single bank's clearance accounts, and transferred the wires to the people where they were supposed to go in the first place. And the ones left over, because none of them were tagged for delivery, was put back into the system. Now, this amounted, those clearance accounts, to $150 billion per day worldwide. And so what Kim did was insert the $150 billion back into the new system. And the bankers were then locked out of clearance accounts altogether, permanently. And any attempt to reload or access those type of accounts now requires identity codes, which would directly identify who is committing the crimes. And if you don't have an ID, no access. You give an ID, you are then exposed as a fraud. The new system is only accessible by Kim while this clean-up operation is ongoing, as only she has the codes, so anyone trying to access flags themselves up as frauds. Banks were desperately trying to contact Black Dragon groups for the codes and others this week, and none of them have it. Oops. They were also unable to siphon a wire anymore. As of Friday, this is in June, no wires, ACHs, EFTs going in and out of any banks, because everything is read-only now, and this is why they started on the Visa system. We had issues with the Visa cards, you remember, in June. That is now also read-only, and they are unable to touch anything in transit. All credit card transactions go through the City of London. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, every single credit card transaction goes through the City of London first. So the City of London were playing games, or those in that square mile, and they thought they would mess with our system, and it didn't work out too well for them. So their machines got pinged back. So all they could see on their screens was tic-tac-toe. Kim has a similar sense of humour to me. And so none of their financial systems was up for a while until they reset them. But we made sure that, rest assured, none of the public will lose any of their funds. And I wanted to make that quite clear. It's now safe in a new system, and it's also protected. A Rothschild's financial system, it wasn't a quantum, did go online on Tuesday in the first week in June, trying to implement siphons in the system again, and by mid-afternoon it was gone. Couldn't break through the first firewalls, never mind the rest. And Kim and team just watched it for a while and then took it down. So when all else fails, they rolled out Plan 56. HSBC talking about rolling out digital currency this week. And they're still trying. And the reason why is because they've got nothing left. And I hope people don't fall for the digital currency bullshit. Next intel item in June, it came to light that Anne, Hillary and Huma Abedin arranged for a $40 million of American money to be sent to the Pakistan Army for contract killings in 2011. How many more crimes can that entity commit without being arrested? It's beyond me. So also in June we revealed something that had been known for a while, but it was kept quiet for reasons of safety, and the consequences could be delivered without intervention. Back in September of 2017, the Rothschilds, who hold 6 seats on the UN Council, which is owned and controlled by the Man of World Holding Trust, and those goons think they own the UN and the world, and threatened all nations in that UN meeting last September, which was September of 17, that if they're not in charge by September 2018, they are going to unleash global warfare, biowarfare. Except we've counteracted this and with the team, and if they did release it, we have back-engineered the viruses with their own DNA, so it will take them out only. So the message was to the Rothschilds then, go ahead and make our day. Yes, Rothschildians, fuck you. We'll enjoy 2019, trust me, and you know it's coming. Erik Prince, founder of Blackwater, who was running for the top job of the head of the Black Dragon Group for North America, is currently vacant due to Dick Cheney being fired that month for non-performance. Anyway, the Prince had been discounted for that job, and rogue Black Dragon Group elements are having major issues filling that role at this time. That went on till November, and we're still in June. Then I highlighted a piece of old documents that have been released under the Freedom of Information Act, and how they solved the problem by developing a vaccination against radiation. This was for the clowns. And in order to do the medical experiments necessary to develop this drug, thousands of American citizens were sacrificed. And the government now admits up to 100,000 were killed to develop the secret radiation vaccine for the criminal elites. I then mentioned about a lot of people talking about or saying they are taking or have taken the red pill via the Matrix movie. Well, people need to quit saying that. It's another trap. You don't think they would give you a full clue on how to escape, do you? No, it's all wrapped in riddles, cryptic and puzzles. And the red pill is actually LSD, another spirit world trap. The key to escape is the lower astral, is not to get trapped in it. Then I did a piece on we had clowns on the TV again, talking about world's overpopulated. Yes, just with them. When actually it's underpopulated. And we mentioned a piece, if you took everyone in the world and put them in the state of Texas, each person would have 1,000 square feet of space. You bear in mind, most average homes are 1,500, 1,800 feet, and yet one person's got 1,000 square feet in Texas, and the whole world fits in Texas, and the rest of the world is empty. All bollocks. Prince Charles decided to wield his alleged authority this week, having failed in his attempt to take out his mother. He then tried to send mercenaries over to take out Kim and the team. Well, that never turned out too well either, and they were blocked from entering the country altogether. Then we were ahead of the game, as we are most times with the intel on this show. And we put this out, and it wasn't believable, and was followed up rather quickly with video evidence. And it appears some naval intelligence may have not wanted the North Korea meeting. Remember, Trump was meeting Kim Jong-un to take place. And there was a missile fired from the region of the naval air station on Whidbey Island on Sunday, June the 10th. The naval deny it, but all evidence points to rogue elements trying to disrupt things. And it is suspected at the time, and is now since been confirmed, that was the SSP. So on the Sunday, a missile was launched out of a naval base at Whidbey Island in Washington State in an attempt, according to all sources, to knock Air Force One and Trump out of the sky due to a change of narrative between Trump and Kim Jong-un. And basically a peace deal was worked out long before Trump left, and Kim went against the Asian families instead, when initially he was one of their stooges. And peace broke out between the countries. Oh my, can't have that now, can we, Mr. Rothschild? Now, Trump was being flanked or guarded by rogue Black Dragon groups, so they knew exactly where he was at all times. And this is why we made an urgent call while he was on the tarmac and begged him not to get on the plane. We were given advance warning, and we gave it to Mr. Trump directly on the tarmac. And so to recap, rogue elements within our own country and military fired a missile at the president and his plane. And not a single mention in the media. Then we released the first hearing ever of Source Energy. Something that was done with Kim and I when I was here in May. And the story went, for the past 5 or 6 weeks, an increase of source energy has been added to this planet and will spread globally. This explains some of the changes you are seeing, feeling within yourself and those around you. It is designed to be an awakening tool for the masses, including the cabal, and a reconnection back to source that has been blocked in various manners over a very prolonged period of time, like 78,000 years. For most of the awake community and those still not mired in religious dogma, this will have a good effect once it is absorbed. As for the others, it will leave them confused and irritated, but it will also bring long-term beneficial effects as well. I wouldn't totally describe it as a wheat and chaff operation, but it will have that effect. But providing those that have done their inner work and integrate their shadow aspects, it can be adapted to fairly quickly. Those resonating with a higher frequency will obviously feel greater benefits in the now, and the rest will be filtering through as time goes by. These energies will increase incrementally over time to provide maximum benefit going forward. So then the message was to go outside and absorb it all in. Collect it and store it within you and transmute it for the benefit of all. So how do you do that? And how will I know? You will say. Well, when you go out on a sunny day and look at the sky, squint your eyes a bit and just stare at the sky, eventually you will see thousands of very small golden pieces floating down from the sky, darting here and there. That is source energy. Learn to collect it, pull it into you, pull it down to the solar plexus, and then push it up through your heart to the crown with a thought of then transmuting it for maximum effect. The IMF made a statement this week that they would rather see the whole world economy crash than let the trust hand back the funds to who it belongs. A Latin American country, we stopped naming them because it issues more threats. So when I talk about African countries, I won't name the individual ones, same as. 4 people with fake IMF badges showed up wearing wigs and glasses, etc., and orders came from the IMF building, and with fake badges. So now you know why we call them clowns. Anyway, the country affected threw them out of their central bank. What are we next? The trust has now frozen all market backdoors and installed a mapping system will track real production of commodities and commodities futures, and the market shall bear numbers based on actual production, supply and demand, and is not affected in any way by what CNN or the BBC or any other news station reports. That's how they tilt the markets, by the news. Further, no one cares about OPEC decrease in output, as the price of oil has no bearing any longer on these decisions. Oil will eventually go down to the mid to high 20s per dollar per barrel and remain stable. Well, we started seeing that correction now. Some market corrections started in June and will continue, and it will go in a controlled manner as to not cause disruption except to the elite that profit off market manipulation. The set of books in the Trust's new system will not allow for any currencies to be overprinted, fake super notes to be deposited, nor any stealing of funds to a black server, such as what happened with the Pentagon. Once funds are out of the system, they will be seen as fraud if they just appear, and the same will happen if it disappears. This also applies to consumers and banks. Furthermore, banks will no longer be able to report fictitious numbers to central banks any longer, claiming that they are liquid with fake bank books. If they are not solvent, this is reported immediately to the authorities in the area. Well, Kim did report them, and eventually, the week before Christmas, the Fed admitted it. Lastly, 22,876 accounts worldwide were found to have received deposits in excess of $10 million or its equivalent in hard cash, meaning someone rolled up to the bank with pallets, truckloads or suitcases full of fake super notes. 22,876 accounts. And due to this error in judgment, Wells Fargo and JP Morgan, the deposits were cleared out for fraudulent activities. All 22,876 accounts were emptied. And a big kudos to the Wells Fargo and JPM for counting so many pallets of fake super notes in a short period of time. And they must have worked rather hard to make all that happen. And we said, sorry, it all disappeared on you. Oops. It was also revealed that Barry Soetoro, or Barack Obama, or long-legged McDaddy, had installed 42 staff members in his government with no FBI clearance. And this was a deliberate move to install the factions-led ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, designed to create division. That's Langley 3. And we raised the question because Kim had found a large transaction. Why is the IRS sending money to a Rothschild's bank in Switzerland to the tune of 780 billion throughout 2017? I can since tell you that those funds were recovered and is back in trust. Rothschilds confirmed this week in June that they lost control of siphon-off financial systems, but they're still telling everyone that they control the SWIFT system. So then they started launching new systems, various names from Prometheus to Hercules, and now they were launching another ancient system called the Alpha Omega. And these are all replete with backdoors, hacking and siphoning fund systems, all designed to try and hack the real quantum system. And the message was, good luck with that. Well, as you now all know, it failed. In June, I also brought out further solutions on how to fix the drug issues, and also a theory on Greenland, for those of you who want to check back on that. And then we had a backlash, given their failure of their systems, the Supernotes accounts put back, which was expected this week in June, following last week's Hammer events. And it all unfolded in a blaze of threats verbally, and a group of goons turning up in America, thinking to its particular place where Kim is, or they thought she was anyway, and their car was laden with explosives, and this was designated to blow Kim and her daughter up. That was in June. Kim responded by putting out this article, which went on Tank's blog, which goes directly to the Rothschilds and the RV people. To my dearest all, many speak of a quantum system for the people. I agree, it is. By definition, in the parts of the world most consider it an unknown. But a quantum system, true quantum, this quantum system can span dimensions, draws from past time and the future yet to come. It is based on its ability to map through time. It reads brainwaves, it knows intention, and is locked by DNA, living DNA, sequencing of the individual. Not one individual, but all. Your wealth within it is coded to DNA of the individual. In the case of nations, it is the RNA of the original source of the said asset. It cannot go anywhere else. So, before I carry on with that, essentially the RNA maps all assets, in ground and above ground. And so there was a load of gold and other in certain bunkers around the world. They're not anymore. And clowns thought they could smelt the gold down and get round it, except it still retains the RNA, even after smelting. So that gold, which belongs to Russia and Croatia, not Chinese elders or Black Dragon groups, can always be mapped. This was done for the security and the safety of our human family. The way it is programmed, it is not possible for the elite to steal wealth from another person, nor another nation any longer. The system does not recognize any royal line, only the line of source, which is present in us all. We are all sons and daughters of the only true king, that is the creator source itself. Even myself, as I program the system to perpetuate with or without me, trust me, it knows my intent too. It knows if I'm under duress or unwillingly making a transaction. Even if I change my mind and try to allocate funds improperly, it will reject it. So much for the 9,000 or so snatch and grab attempts by the cabal. It won't help a bit. They thought they were going to snatch it and force her to sign over the trust. Pointless. But you're talking to stupid. It reads into all organic life forms, understands growth patterns, and lastly holds massive amounts of data in a compilation of materials the size of a grain of sand. Technology not even the secret space program nor the Majestic 12 has or had access to, let alone the current antiquated financial systems you are calling quantum. Gone are the days of data servers the size of football fields. It calculates true trade values based on real production, not what the elite wants the world to see, but real production. As of Monday, the market re-evaluation shall begin to occur. The true production of commodities and their respective values will begin to unfold. This program was launched on Friday after business hours. Its power source is not electricity. It is not dependent on any grid, not even crystals anymore. It is powered by the very source of life itself. Yes, the very source of energy that powers you, powers it. It can only operate in the light. It rejects darkness and evil intent. Each particle of source courses through its fibre. Some of you may know it as the God particle, the fifth element, or the Higgs boson. Each particle is part of a whole. It connects to source itself. It connects to you. It connects to every living thing in this universe and all other universes. Each particle is a small particle of the whole. Like a tiny network computer on a mainframe, it easily passes through the time-space continuum. Think of the possibilities if you could access the secrets of the universe through one small particle. CERN has made attempts to isolate and access this type of technology. Where they failed, we succeeded. The system has been running on full source energy for the past 6 weeks at the point of convergence to the two torus currently flowing through this planet. Is an incredible amount of source energy, limitless and constantly regenerating. The same technology will power the global train. This works. A prototype has already been built and also tested. It knows no space. It knows no time. It only knows intention. It is not source and was not built to replace source in any way. It is currently harnessing and sharing this source energy with all of you until the original flower of life torus pattern can be restored on this planet, which is essential for our survival. We will also have a far better way to travel. No need for unpentium or other elements harmful to humans. And this is the beginning of free energy. It works. Tesla knew, and we know it too. Millions of people die every year over oil and gas. This genocide must and will stop. Has anyone noticed the price of food going up over the last month? It has by 20 to 30%. Why? Because the cabal-controlled CNN fake media reports oil shortages, and the Middle East will run out of oil, and so the gas prices go up. Then the transport cost goes up, and so does the cost of food. Going forward, this will no longer be the case. It is not possible to have a shortage of oil because it is a regenerating resource, i.e. it's abiotic. And we've not even begun to tap the resources of Russia, America and many other nations. Sometimes it's better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. No one needs the cabal oil anymore. The truth is, we didn't need it over 100 years ago. But oil will become worthless within the next couple of years. To summarize, a quantum system that has the capacity to map information sources throughout the multiverse. It is powered by a limitless energy source, holds a football field worth of data, sourcing servers. Hello, Five Eyes, you can Google this one. In a substance the size of a grain of sand. It accounts for intent via a hyper-permeable brainwave component and identifies the individual via DNA, living DNA, and the original assets of RNA and GNA. Yes, I remember that well when I was told about that 3 years ago. Money is just a bunch of numbers in a consistently running algorithm tied to the RNA or origin of its asset base. Placing all proceeds into that bucket tied to its origin, RNA, and its people, living DNA, of that original location. This is what it is programmed to do. Cannot be stopped or changed until the task is complete. This is why the Fed, the families, the cabal, Chinese elders cannot register said assets of the America, Russia, Africa to a server, say in Shanghai anymore. And yes, we saw you attempting that last night, and yet again it failed. See, your RNA is not a match, pure and simple. This system also saves me a lot of time in constantly identifying access. I hope this explains the new system, which has been launched, not going to be soon, imminent or 2 weeks, but is done and launched. It's already operating. One of the tasks of the system was mapping everyone. Now that has been mapped, all living beings on this big rock, distribution shall begin. It is impossible to steal funds anymore, even though the corrupt bankers may choose to try and steal from you, the people, like they have done for many years. Well, now they can't. The new system will look for the living DNA of person X, consent through a hyper-permeable component, and if it's not there, nothing will move. So there you have it. A message to all the cabal stooges reading this, and I'm not addressing any of you in the IDC for the record. You can take your oil siphons, satellite diversions, and stick them where the source does not shine. Peace out. Kim Possible. That ended June. Next we're going to go into July. And yet again, the clowns tried to eliminate the team, Kim and her daughter, on the first Monday in July, following last week's car bomb attempts, and at which point do the Patriots step in and act. Enough of this nonsense. SSP started wielding their big stick, or so they thought anyway, and is now exerting heavy control over the US military. And the request was back in July, it's time for those military to stand up and be counted. SSP will eliminate you when you have served your purpose as well. The order told you all that 2 years ago in the memo, which was a repeat of what Kissinger told you years back. So the message to the military in July, you can either be pawns or heroes. Make your choice. The IMF in July started running around the planet advising countries that they owe debt. So they're forcing countries through plans they concocted to collect their money. And two examples are, one country was forced to raise their gas prices by 25 cents. Now you're seeing why we had all those yellow vests in France. This was the IMF. right across the board. And this particular country they threatened with this is a very, very poor country. And the entire 25 cents goes directly to the IMF. And there are currently protests over this situation in this particular country, which wasn't France. It was a South American or Central American country. But it also happens to be a country with resources also. Next, in another poor country where they forced the government to increase the bus fare by $1, which doubled the original fare. And this country's people can't afford to pay this. Both countries' leaders were called to Washington, D.C. IMF headquarters, not for long. Officers were told to extort money from their citizens. July brought another of my solution pieces, this time on prostitution. You can check that out on the Patreon. All the transcripts are on there. And then I did a piece on fake names. Fake names are everywhere. How and why is that allowed? And why do people do that? Why is it so prevalent? Mr. Zuckerberg, with a silent F at the front, his real name is Greenberg. Look up the Greenberg family. They are all involved in the false flag events. And yes, the girl in many scenes at those events is a Greenberg family member. And also check out the Sexton family. They are actors in those events also. It appears hardly anyone in public life has a real name anymore, even as going as far up as the former president. Why didn't he use his real name, Barry Soetoro? Why were nearly all of the stars of the movies of the 40s through the 60s predominantly of Jewish origin, and yet for a religious group who were so proud of their own culture, and yet they all changed their names? Ben Kingsley, Michael Caine, Larry King, Rock Hudson, Joan Crawford, Kirk Douglas, Audrey Hepburn, Judy Garland, the Sheen family, Fred Astaire, Helen Mirren, Cary Grant, Marilyn Monroe, Tom Cruise, Angela Jolie, David Bowie, Elton John, Nicolas Cage, Sophia Loren, Woody Allen, Kevin Spacey, Bob Dylan, Rita Hayworth, Paul McCartney, John Wayne, Doris Day, Ringo Starr, just to name just a few. All of these people were idolised for their stage names, yet only a few know their real names. Why would people seeking to make a name for themselves and wanting to be important and famous then proceed to change their names? Doesn't make sense. So the person seeking importance or fame essentially loses their identity. It's a strange concept and thought pattern, is it not? Well, how far does this go back? Well, the being known as Jesus can not have been the original name either, as the letter J didn't come into existence until the 14th century. So that means Job, John the Baptist, Jehovah, Judas are all fake as well. Again, people of said high importance all doing a name change. The alt media is heavily distorted by changed names also. Kerry Cassidy, Wilcock, Corey Good, Michael Tsarian, Jordan Maxwell, Henry Deacon. In fact, most who appeared on Project Camelot in the early days all have stage names. Sasha Stone of ITNJ is another with a fake name. His real name is Simon Jean Paul Sasha Adams. Sean Stone, son of Oliver Stone, is Sean Silverstein. It's absolutely rampant, and one wonders how they set up bank accounts or social security cards. Are they allowed to put their stage names on them, and if so, how? What system allows for it? What is the precedent? Why does so many of the stage name people have mainly Jewish or German backgrounds? Like George Soros, whose real name is Schwartz. Winston Shrout is the English version of Schroeder or Schroeter. His family is from Germany. Even the royals are in on it. Meghan Markle's. Her birth name is Rachel. Her husband also, his real name is Henry. Now, there are circumstances of changing your name for safety and security when involved in whistleblowing. I do get that, and I think it's a valid reason. But why are so many of the public faces all running around with fake names? Cover up? Oh yeah. The question is why, and what is the purpose of it all? Perhaps the simple answer is correct again. These people are fake, who don't live in the real world. To them, all the world's a stage. They are the actors and actresses in it all, like the world of politics. It's all theatre, all staged, and also all illusion. July brought the blue chicken cult crashing down. Finally, with David Wilcock resignation letter before he was pushed, I might add. Predictably, Wilcock denied all knowledge of the occult nature of Gaia TV, who is run by a coven member, Black Magicians. Wilcock was told that he was working for a coven before he signed up, both by our team and also directly by Shane. So he did know. Now, predictably, Wilcock proceeded to throw Corey under the bus as well. And like Randy and I predicted in a show in October of 2017, where we offered him an olive branch to step down, Corey ignored it, and he will pay a heavy price for that next year. Well, he's paying a heavy price now. Perhaps we'll have another song. This is for the Blue Chicken Cult. That's classic. For the Blue Chicken Cult, Ghost Chickens in the Sky. Thanks to the listener who sent that in to me last week. Oh, we love to have a laugh, don't we? Right, where are we? Let's get on with July. And Trump and Melania were on high alert in July. There was threats to do another takedown of the plane whilst over the UK. And some of you will have seen pictures of them getting off Air Force One when they went to meet the Queen, if memory serves me correctly. And Trump turned up an hour late due to these issues. As reported, the updates to the SWIFT, ACH and FedWire transfer systems have been updated and secured, and as of the past week they were running at 100% capacity. And on the Friday, some VAX port transfers were attempted after banking hours, and the cabal literally had to cut off the power to the ports and the bank to stop them from coming in. Kim had sent funds to various accounts, 19 billion, if memory serves me correctly, in a number of accounts, and they were pulling the cord. And as planned, this launched an all-out investigation to document fraudulent bank activity because of the misdirection or the blocking of transfers without cause is considered an act of treason. Homeland Security and the FBI continue to investigate these matters, but apparently aren't authorised to get the transfers released. Both of them attended the Citibank, or Shitty Bank as Kim likes to call it, representatives of the FBI, the DOJ, and also the Department of Homeland Security ordered the release of the funds into a particular account, and Citibank refused at the behest of Rothschilds and Dragon people. So our team then tested the legitimacy of the new wire transfer system, making transfers to the various countries around the world as the regular practice of international business. All transfers cleared within the first 24 hours, and most cleared the same day. And this would normally never happen, as transfers are regularly held for 5 days and sometimes as much as a month. So this was the promise of live banking. Then we were kind of annoyed at the American government. It doesn't appear to want to actually do anything to support human liberation, as no action had been taken to release our transfers. At the very least, it's nice to see the Homeland Security and the FBI working to do their job to protect the people. But the government at that time was reticent. The last component that needed to be adjusted in the Visa credit card system to ensure that our cards cannot be cloned or our identities copied and our money stolen. And it's a big problem that people are suffering with the cards, and herein lies the beauty of utilising the source energy, brainwave measurements and the DNA identification technology. These combined factors make it impossible to steal from us once the Visa system is completed, requiring the admin security override to block or misdirect these transactions by anyone. So what happened is Kim became the admin override on every bank, which the trust owns, despite what the Rothschilds think. So she made herself a bank employee at every bank and is the only one in possession of the admin override now. Rothschilds continue to repeat the same failed attempts to kill Kim. They believe that they have discovered and have control of the next person in line who controls the assets of the trust. And in the past they've tried the same thing, only to have the next in line unable to access the funds. IMF threatened the country of Malawi, said they would take away their sovereignty if they didn't pay the IMF. Ooh. Too funny. A non-sovereign entity, the IMF, threatening to take a country's sovereignty away. Dumbasses. You don't have the authority. It was then confirmed the Clintons are now totally broke, and last time they were broke, they sold themselves out to the Bush cartel. This is the time of the Monica Lewinsky incident, where the Clintons was ranging between 7 and 16 million in debt, and they sold themselves out to the Bush cartel. They paid the debt off, and they did the bidding. Rothschild's Aker the Crown Corp has resorted to massive insurance fraud. Rothschilds took out a massive life insurance policy against all of its employees and is killing them off in accidents, in inverted commas, and taking the money. All policies pay out to the Rothschilds Bank in Switzerland, and so far there are around 2,000 people who are dead. AIB, American Insurance Bureau, is the regulator, is in on it, and you do not need the authorization of any person to take out the key man insurance. These people don't even know why they are being targeted, and it was stated they are insured for $20 million per person. I'd heard about the $1 million per person a few years back. But it seems as the desperation ramps up, so does the death inflation. Then we got news through the back channels of a major breakthrough in regards to the Rothschilds. Many are now starting to question their real motives and are finally calling it out as BS, which we've been telling them this all along, but I guess some people want to take a little bit longer to have proof on top of proof on top of proof on top of proof to infinity. And the Roth's max of illusion is now falling apart. That continued throughout the year. Cabal tried to activate siphons again, and they were found on some of the ATM systems such as the Star Network Plus. Those are all just about shut down in July. Dickhead Cheney was back on the scene again, this time to try and leverage gold mines in Utah. The message was to him is, get back in your bunker, Darth, before we scoop you up in the bulldozer. Chinese elders update. On Saturday night they tried to launch the new and improved, but not really, but whatever, black screen. They tried to register account numbers of the trust with crazy numbers that they put names on some of the fictitious accounts to minions owed money. They then tried to attach that system to the banks, but the firewall blocked them. So then they tried to issue Visa cards. It was as if they had bought prepaid cards with $100 on each of them and increased the limit by hacking into the Visa system. But unfortunately for them, the Visa system was all locked down the week previous, so the system blocked them again. So they were not able to use those cards, but they still gave those cards out to known gold buyers, particularly in the East. And they proceeded to put gold on hold and attempted to buy with the cards all day on Monday in July, except the payments for the gold never came through, as the black screen system used for the cards went down on the Saturday after Kim took it down. And so the cards couldn't be connected, but so much fake trading meant gold prices dipped like crazy on Friday through the Monday in July. That's why. I then did a piece about, I wanted to mention about off-world trading again, as it was prevalent now in what's going on. And as I understand it, 70% of world trade done around the planet is for off-world trade. By off-world, it can also mean in-world, involving resources, labour, and also food sources. But the minerals was the key aspect of it in many ways, and still is. The SS small p, Cabal elements and some off-world elements all want to escape out of here so they can regroup and come back with greater forces, or depart and turn this planet into an uninhabitable zone, which was the original plan, which they've done to many other worlds using the fast destroyer weapon that creates deserts everywhere. Next message is all gates will remain closed to you until we all learn to work together. The elements you seek that worked previously will not work now until we work together in harmony. It's the new directive, whether you like it or not. Escape plans will not work either, no matter what you try. You are all stuck in here until you see sense or die. Next message to the clowns is you can call off your accident assassins. The clowns had trained 100 accident assassins to take us out. And the message was that won't bring you the change you desire either. So you may think you can cheat by bumping off certain people of our group, by making it look like an accident, but everyone knows what you're up to. So quit with your stupidity of take this out, as that will not work either on any level. Quit with your toxins that you tried putting in Kim's car. Quit with your tipping fridges off the side of a truck in front of Kim's car. And quit with other methods like you tried last week with insect drones. This week also brought in July the jailing of Heather Giraffe, and she got 57 months jail, which I found disappointing, despite her nasty words to me. But I did, back in 2013, warn her, and how her, Neil Wolfe, and in particular Danny McKenney, along with Lisa Harrison, of what they were getting into, and they all told me to go and F myself. Well, that was a costly mistake for her, and why I warn against challenging the IRS, the driver's license issue, the strawman accounts, and using common law in current courts. All of them are valid, but not in their system. For everyone that triumphs over it, there is thousands that pay a heavy price. Lots of stuff about trade wars and tariffs. Of course, we had the America-China issue going on then. And all of it is media illusion again. It's nothing to do with the two countries. What the tariff issue is really about is cutting out Dragon Group trading control. Not China the country. The two dragon groups operating in both countries, the Black Dragons in particular. Had Full confirmed that over 2,000 Cabal are dead in July and is escalating. This is them consuming themselves. It's not our work. But our work has had an effect to cause them to be in widespread panic. We had a United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced late July, saying the UN is running out of money and is urging members to pay up amid the looming financial crisis for the international body. And a letter to his staff last week in July, he warned member states of a troubling financial situation facing the UN. Yeah, Kim emptied all their accounts as they were rogue. Which he says is caused by late payments to the UN by member states. And our response was, yeah, it's time to tell the public the real truth. The UN was disbanded by the trust, and the funds looted from each country was returned to them, and late payments are not going to arrive, as those payments are illegal and not part of the original charter. Then we had fun and games of the clowns looting 1.8 billion out of the Fed in the late July, which may sound a lot to us, but in their terms it's a pittance. And we did track it, and it was stalled enough to prevent further intrusion, and so we could see who was doing it. And that avenue has now also been closed off. And this is essentially what is happening with the quantum system. They are trying to run old tech alongside it, but can't get direct access to it no matter how much they try. And whilst it's frustrating for Kim, and she's a bit of a perfectionist, I see it as another avenue that they had to expose to keep in the game, and another avenue subsequently closed off. Every time they tried something, we closed it off, and we learnt a lot to prevent others. And eventually they will run out of avenues. We had confirmation late July that Trump has finally realised the letter that was written in January, the sovereignty one, and what it was and what it entails, and is now on a mission to take over the Fed from the Rothschilds. That's ongoing. August, the Fed meeting with the Rothschildians recently brought out more desperate measures by the fast-phasing global elites. They were talking about using TRNs, that came up again recently, as a new note, and taxing heavily all the big companies who previously paid little or no taxes. This was to take place with immediate effect to raise funds for tomorrow's RV. Oh dear. You know what happened? It failed. Trump took on the remaining Koch brother, Charles, after David quit 1 or 2 months previously, about a week or so after speaking to Kim. Funny that. The Koch brothers were another hidden group with rich family backgrounds dictating policies and politics, finance, all of which have failed in the control system ideology. Further hacking attempts were made to get into the system out of Singapore and also New Zealand, and they were trying to implement a new black screen system, which is another backdoor version of the old system, and that failed. Fraudulent notes are filtering into the US now with 2013 printed on them, and all of these are fraud with no new notes with the correct and verified allocation numbers which haven't been printed since 2009. No new notes were issued after 2009. Work was underway to deal with that issue. The Philippines was reported to have warehouses full of pesos that have been there since Marduk was in charge, and they're now trying to rolling them out and attempting to buy gold with them from the locals. But it turns out the locals have been duped also, as the gold bars they think they have are only gold plated. So expect some fun and games in the Philippines in the near future, and it did unveil. I also reported I was getting frequent reports around the world of issues with banks and unable to get access to accounts. And I gave a further warning, is you all must have spare cash now at all times. These incidents will increase. In fact, we had a news item about last week in the UK. A person was refused access to their account, even though there was $10,000 or £10,000 in it. And I warned back in August that these will increase as their funding, or better term, looting avenues, are all being closed down. We got news that the deep state had sent a message to Obama through an interview on CNN that he's no longer protected. He's been hung out to dry like Anne. And then we had the classic Looney Tunes Nancy Pelosi trying to implement a plastic straw ban as being important for gun control. Yeah, I said it right. And she went on, it stops pea shooting and spitballing, which are gateway guns, according to Pelosi. That complete retard is the Speaker of the House. Oh my. Pea shooters, gateway guns. Okay. Roths put out another contract, a hit piece contract on Kim on the dark web in August. Except this came with a massive difference. Normally when contracts go out on the dark web, there's a load of people fighting over the contract because they want the money. Only this time, no one came forward to take that task on, which is a big step for us. And now it's really, the heat is on the Rothschilds. Less and less are listening to their lying and conniving ways anymore. People are not buying it. And their power, control and wealth is eroding away. And the message was, you should have took the offer Kim gave you 18 to 24 months back. Those you used and trample over may now come back to bite you. Have a nice day, Roths. Venezuela issue. There was a lot of trouble going on in Venezuela, and more fear porn put on the alt media. The real issue in Venezuela is to do with the FARC guerrillas, who are another of the aspect of the Rothschilds paid armies, who are being funded via oil deals and also other minerals. And some of those guerrillas were sent to attack Kim previously. They were the ones in February or March. And the issue is the UN, or Rothschild's portion of the UN, have been training Hugo Chavez's daughter for its stooge role in Venezuela, using the popularity her father had. But the daughter is not of that ilk. And I gave warning to the people of Venezuela to see through the illusion. Venezuela is also where they are sending Muslim Brotherhood jihadists via Oman and Saudi Arabia, and the port is also used to process the stolen ISIS oil there, which is not working out too well. So the clowns are now trying to use Mexico to process the ISIS oil. Then there was a bill highlighted on the internet. I think it was one of the QAnons I got this from. HR 5181 was stuffed into the 2016 NDAA on December the 2nd, just before Trump took over, and basically allocated $160 million was set aside to pay alt media journalists, amongst others, to spread disinformation to counter what they claim is fake news. There you have it. Paid alt media journalists. So this runs nicely into the next item. Alex Jones, paid alternative media journalist. He had a meltdown in this month, which was a psyop. It's the usual, look, I'm being attacked, so I must be valid, which is classic Wilcock and is also a classic agency tactic. And it resembles all the fuss a few years back when Alfred Weber got banned off Facebook. That was another sideshow, as he is a government agent. He worked under the Carter administration, Mr. Weber. Jones is COINTELPRO, pure and simple. He works with the Stratfor Group, known for links with Israeli intelligence. And he rants and raves in his show about the cabal and corporate control, and yet the same man makes $300 million a year in advertising the very companies that are damaging us with their core pirate tactics. Do you really think those companies would promote a genuine whistleblower that is exposing their own company's role in the control system? Well, do you? IMF again. Many countries are now starting to see through the illusion and making inquiries with varying degrees of success. And I've said before, you would be astonished at how little governments and state officials really know. Well, now they're starting to learn some real truth for the first time. And of course, there's a backlash to that in differing countries, as the IMF march in demanding payments that each country allegedly owes. They don't. Now they know each country is owed massive dividends from the trust and not debt instruments of the cabal. So the IMF started to go around threatening countries, and now they are reduced to asking countries to lend them money, as they, like the UN, now don't have a pot to piss in. And the key now is for those countries threatened to all combine together and force the pirates and the bandits out of your region. Funds are there for each country once the blocking and threats die down, and we requested that they hold their nerve in spite of threats to the country leaders or their children in some cases. They threatened the First Lady's children in Ecuador. It came to note that the clowns are messing with all different types of communications, and be it mobile phones, landlines, internet banking, ATMs, and the word was it won't always be this way. More hacking attempts and more blocking attempts on the quantum system. Once again the hacking failed. Once again the quantum system recognised it and recorded who did it, and eventually they will be unable to hack or block. In August there was 3 attempts on Trump's life in the previous 6 weeks. His bodyguard in Scotland took the bullet for him. He jumped in front of Trump when they shot at him, which is not published too heavily in the alt media. But then neither was the missile fired at Air Force One previously in the year. And then we did a piece which will take us into the next music break on the government. And this doesn't just apply to America, it's about America. It applies to all governments. It's a system, it's a corporation, not a government. But the government is blamed for a lot of things that they have no control over, like ET disclosure. It is 26 levels above the president. 3, 4 and 5 letter groups in this country have no congressional oversight. All of them. Government were blocked out of any involvement or direct knowledge of the ET issue after the humanity treasonist Eisenhower sold us out. And this is why Kennedy tried to get the ET papers lowered to government level and signed off on an agreement with Russian counterpart Brezhnev on November the 11th or 12th of 1963. You all know what happened next. And what that would have done is America and the USSR, as it was then, would exchange all ET-related papers to each country. And this, in effect, was an attack on the secrecy levels, which today is called the deep state. People's in secrecy levels above the president up to 49, although I hear that number goes higher. Yes, there's only one person that's higher than that, and that's Kim, level 64, the highest on the planet. Whilst the president is level 23. So 11 or 12 days after signing that agreement, Kennedy was dead. Don't think for one moment Kennedy was doing that for the people. He wasn't. It was a faction war, perhaps like now, and was against the Bush group. They were trying to take the Bush group down. The government has no control over the military. This is part of the inner war that I describe. Either they are owned by the SSP, which we can confirm, but also the Rothschilds think they own it, and the Jesuits claim they have owned it since the 1500s. The government has no control over income tax, or receives any of it. Zero. Nothing. Zip. Nada. For those new to the show, the IRS is not an American company. It's not on American soil. It is a trust of the Crown, stationed in Puerto Rico. The government has no control over the Fed or the IRS. They are operatives for and by the Crown. The government has no control over the media, as proven more so in this past 18 months than any other time. And there is a reason why Trump is calling it fake news. It all started with CBS back in the 1920s. Wonder how many people realise what the C stands for. It's Columbia, as in District of Columbia. They were working with the OSS, now known as the CIA, to produce propaganda for American audiences. 1920. The government has no control over the SSP, the real secret space program ongoing since the 1940s minimum, and part of which was Majestic 12 until recently, when the whole of Majestic 12 was taken out by the order. The government has no control over policy that is dictated way higher up. The government has no control, and neither do the people, until possibly the last election, as time will tell on that, of who is voted in or voted out. So maybe it was time to stop blaming the government for everything and target who the real issue is. The faceless men. Hi all, welcome back, and we will continue with our year review, and we're still in August and things are starting to escalate. Military tribunals for top names came up again in August, and I wanted to reiterate to the top brass covering those trials that it was the alt media who drove this truth narrative that led to the exposure of these criminal elites. And I felt and directly requested against some members of the alternative community to be in attendance of any future military tribunal. We have to be transparent going forward, and members of our community selected should be able to observe real justice being served. So it's not a sideshow tribunal none of us can see or hear, which is then wrapped up in the bullshit called national security for numbers of decades. We required transparent, instant justice. Those are still being mentioned, by the way. And the second request done that in that show was that Hillary, should Hillary be convicted in a military tribunal, one of the conditions to remain alive for the rest of its lifetime is it should be made an example of and should be made to read out on national TV across all stations all the crimes she has been found guilty of. This has multiple implications. One, the general public gets it from the horse's mouth, so no more hearsay. Two, it will start the healing process of the soul, if she has one. I suspect not. That is no guarantee, as many in here are soulless and can work off some of her karma before the next lifetime. People will say, why should we care about healing her? Well, it's a valid point. But carrying the karma over into multiple lifetimes could lead to continuous cycle of negativity in that soul. And what if they all meet up again in the next lifetimes? One could argue that karma should be erased after this lifetime, given interference done here, and we all have a fresh start. And it's something many should ponder on this piece. I know many want eye for an eye, but if we keep doing that, we all go blind. We all learn something new every day, and this was revealed to me in August. At this time, I'd moved to my permanent location, or temporary permanent location, to be working with Kim permanently. And there was a rather detailed call where something came up that was quite a shock, not only to me, although I did suspect it, what was revealed in the show. And it was all religions were a human experiment to see how they reacted to it. And essentially it was a disconnect you from source program, and an eventual worship program to the false gods, Akka, Ra, Isis, Horus, etc. And then this then took on other forms as the experiment obviously worked in some aspect of as the memory of our connection to source over time faded. Around 2,000 years ago, it took a bad turn for the worst. In came the Christian religion and Catholicism, and Constantine added all new layers when in Jerusalem, which was not modern-day Jerusalem, but Jerusalem back then was Constantinople. The original Jerusalem was in Russia, under the guise of the Rus. At around 1100 AD, a splinter group of Christians was formed and was known as the Muslim sect. That's where Muslim came from. In the 1500s, protesting Catholics then morphed into a Protestant religion. You see, it's all part of the same thing. All are superseded in the experiment by the Torah book for Hebrews and the Talmud book for non-Hebrews. That's the other way around. The Torah is the Christian version that people can read, given to them by the Hebrews. The Talmud is only for the more radical Jewish people, because once you read some of the things in the Talmud, you'd want to kill the person on the spot, or some people would. Of course, later in the year we did cover some of the excerpts out of the Talmud, which is why it's not available for general sale. Now, it's my understanding that the original Hebrews, in inverted commas, are Anunnaki in DNA, or ran by them. Both are known as the chosen ones. Under Source, there were no special ones. We were all created equal. Hierarchy is the reign of the ego for those who thought they were above creation. They will meet their maker soon and find out their own folly and karma. Desperation levels ramping up in many countries across the globe, particularly in Africa and South and Central America, with the continuing threats from the UN, IMF and the World Bank. But more countries now are not buying into their bullshittery anymore, and this is a significant change and a further erosion of the old system ways. Who funds the IMF if it runs out of cash? The United States, go figure, is the biggest political player in the fund. Congress this month was asked to stump up 18 billion or more for the IMF. It didn't go ahead. The 3 stages of truth and how it applies to Kim and the Man of World Holding Trust and the team. On all the top levels in each country. First, it's ridiculed. Second, it's violently opposed. And third, it is accepted as being self-evident. So where are we at? Well, we have gone through stage 1 of it being ridiculed. And the second stage of it being violently opposed has largely been passed through also. As for stage 3 as being accepted as self-evident, we need to split that into 2 categories by adding another stage called, oh my, what do we see there? Is it real? And was it the truth all along? We are in some aspects at the first stages of stage 3. An escalation of that and an event now will trigger stage 3 in full and will be accepted as self-evident. Then the funding will begin. That continues. Then we announced the figure there are 1.3 billion people alive today operating without electricity. A staggering statistic in today's modern world, when billions are spent laying pipelines for oil and trillions spent fighting over oil. The fact that roughly 20% of the world's people don't have access to electric. Ridiculous. Then we outed further unknown intel about the Rodney King event. The people who filmed the Rodney King event were there on their first visit to America, but were linked to Australian intelligence, who are linked with the CIA, aka Five Eyes. So they were there on purpose. The two people who were in the car with Rodney King that night both died in the car. They were shot. And yet why has nothing been mentioned about it? And the question that was put out in the show remains as why Rodney King, who was serving an 8-year jail sentence, was let out after 3 weeks. And then that incident happened soon after. Rodney King was paid a lot of money to film that event. And they knew what he was going to do. They built him a house with a pool. Except Rodney couldn't swim. How did he die? He drowned. 2 and 2 equals. Life, when viewed from outside the box, throws up all kinds of things to ponder on, some of which we've covered in the shows. But a repeated one crops up, maybe every day for some, maybe a few times a week for others, and it all plays into perspective. Children get much chastised and then often psychologically referred to so-called specialists if they keep mentioning imaginary friends. So, a few things about this. A child has more senses ages 0 to 6 and then has them dulled by society and undertaught parents. And I don't care how many levels of degrees and masters and all that you have, we have all been undertaught. Only recently have we delved into what is classed as paranormal. Interesting term. Para means beyond, altered or against when merged with normal. It really tells you the term normal is a control system. Beyond normal, altered normal or against normal. But the question is, who decided what was normal to begin with? And why haven't we really questioned what is normal? Normal defines boundaries and limits, and is another way of reductionism I mentioned in a previous show. You could say normal is what's in the box. Well, the box is the system that has limited everything. A bit like the term, the sky is the limit. Really? It might be your limit, but it's not mine. Everywhere you look in society, it's all about reductionism and limitation, and for too long, too many have just consumed far too easily. So back to the imaginary friends. Society tells us one thing, but always covers up another, and it's all about perspective. Perspective should be your view of the world, not somebody else's, or largely one that has been created for you to follow. The question is, why are children who have imaginary friends treated with derision, ridicule, or worse, sent to book-read psychologists? And yet, more than 3 billion people or more can parade around the planet declaring a love for someone they've never met in person, entrusting and dedicating their whole lives to this one person called Jesus, who in essence is an imaginary friend. It's funny, isn't it? But you see, it's all about perspectives, isn't it? Psychotic AI, magnetic field, overlay frequency, the veil, the simulation is gone or faded to a point of non-interference was announced in August. We are only experiencing the memory of it. Those who hold on to the memory are holding on to the control system. A case of give it energy and it comes to you. Don't and it's not there. It's a bit like making a curry-based meal. The meal, the dishes, the pans are all gone and clean, but the smell lingers for days and weeks. And here's an example of, hello, McFly. I will spare mentioning the country involved, but this is indicative of the levels of other synth-like behaviour of follow a path that has always failed. Kim spoke to a particular country in August and was offering them substantial funds to kickstart projects, all free from the trust. They did their due diligence on the trust and it all stacked up. But in came the IMF stormtroopers and suddenly the country decided it didn't want free money from the trust and decided it would borrow with interest from the IMF. I kid you not. And this is the levels of stupidity, corruption and skullduggery of those operating at the top levels of many of the countries. Like we said in the show the previous week to this, I hope all countries now demand their loans off the IMF with a 3-day payout stipulation and then come back to us when all that fails as well. Clowns in August tried a double-pronged attack to enter the quantum system from Hong Kong and also the naval base in Virginia, which is likely run by the SSP, which was later confirmed. Both failed individually and collectively. Both received a humorous message and both had their systems crashed and burned. It will take at least 2 weeks to a month to get their systems back up and running. The cabal and their minions are literally spending their last resources now intent to pull off their RV program and stop the quantum system and the trust. Much was being made in August of Trump making payments via his lawyer to the slapper known as Daniels, the slapper, whatever her name is. And yet, Stormy Daniels. And yet, it's funny, the Portal people never mentioned that Barack Obama gave a $150,000 bribe to silence a hate preacher, Jeremiah Wright. Or that Bill Clinton paid Paula Jones $850,000 to go away. I don't seem to recall the Portal people focusing on that too much. We gave out more details of the Rothschilds and their so-called quantum system under the Wright-Patterson Air Base. Their clearance only allows them to go 6 levels down of the 13 levels below Wright-Patterson, and the bottom 7 levels belongs to the non-terrestrials, and they are protected under the peace treaty. Except the minions decided they needed more power for their system and drilled a hole from level 6 through to level 8 to hook up to another system. Well, despite that, that failed also. Luckily for them, they did no real damage, or Wright-Patterson Air Base in its entirety would no longer exist. The weaponry they have below our feet is way above what is on the surface. A new input of source energy was added this weekend in August, and this will bring increased changes on many levels. The final piece tonight, which is fairly long, is covered in August, and this will complete August. When people speak of the event or events, and ask when it's happening, and my answer is always, which event? And is it not the case that many events have already happened? If you think not, you've just not connected the dots yet, which is understandable given the amount of bullshittery everywhere. Well, here are the events that have already taken place. I could stop out at number 1, but there's 30 plus. Number 1, we are not dead. We should have all been gone by 2012. Number 2, Kim took over the trust and designated it for all the benefit of all the countries and its people, and not the clowns. Event 3, the peace treaty ended 16,500 years of martial law. It also ended the shipping war and law more commonly known as Admiralty law or maritime law in 2016, and yes, we know it's still operating. Work is underway. 4, the Draco left in 2015 except a few minions. 5, the parents went from 21 down to 2. Both of them are unsane, neither are here anymore, and only have VI projections of themselves being in here. One is known as the Red Queen. 6, the Covens collapsed from 13 down to 2, and we are unsure whether that 2 is now down to 0. 7, the Illuminati no longer exists and is now broken into 5 factions: the Jesuit, Asian, Zionist, Nazi and secret societies. All are fighting each other and also infighting. 8, the Rothschilds, who support all 5 factions, have had to have a fire sale of a number of properties this year, sold most of their stocks this year, lost control of the Crown, lost control of Washington DC and many other regions, lost control of the mercenaries as they are refusing to take on Rothschild's hit squad tasks now. Their alleged quantum system they rolled out crashed and burned on first attempt. A top Rothschild is in big health trouble, I'm hearing. 9, soul traps and memory wipes and forced reincarnation ended 2013 through 2014. Number 10, the Saturn moon matrix and also the Saturn entity rendered obsolete. 11, CERN also rendered obsolete in August of 2015. 12, the psychotic AI rendered obsolete. That was in November of 15. 13, the matrix veil or simulation all rendered obsolete, although only remnants in our memory loss keep it real. In reality, it's not. 14, Marduk was taken out permanently following a request by us to remove him was sent to the council, which was agreed to, and we removed him permanently in late 2016. That was a big loss to them, as only he knew the full system and how it all worked. 15, Kim and the trust took over the whole banking system and has blocked them from accessing it despite numerous attempts at hacking, usually one day before the mythical RV. All of them failed. Kim has proven to all and sundry only she has the codes that work, and only she can release the trust funds. Only she has the assets to support it also. She has released some funds, this is back in August, to some countries, but plans are blocking all attempts of funds reaching America currently. That's still ongoing and being worked on, as this country is under a financial assassination order by the Rothschilds, Dragon Groups, SSP and others. 16. Project Blue Beam failed. 17. Global biological extinction weapons failed. 18. World War III failed and won't be returning. 19. A collection of all countries' in-ground resources failed. That would have led to World War III should they have got that. 20. Kim took over the UN, stripped the assets they had stolen and gave them back to all the countries to whom it belonged. 21. The alt media came out of the dark shadow cast as conspiracy theorists and nutters. Most so-called conspiracies are now in the public eye and are based in fact. Despite alt media being a fraction of what it once was, the few left carried the can, the co-opted and agency-paid shills are being laid bare by this show and also Randy Morgan's. 22. Portal people, aka mainstream, trashed into almost oblivion now, considering many people now think CNN is and others are fake news. 23. The churches laid bare for what they really are, a total sham. That was an initial experiment played on the people. All religions are part of that experiment to take you away from who and what you are, make you forget source. And of course we also had the pedos being exposed, the financial skullduggery exposed, the heinous slaying of the people's teachers and their offspring, Radomir and Mary Magdalene, done by the church. Church also have been exposed in recent years for slaying the seers, the visionaries and the psychics, all burned at the stake. Created wars for their sacrifices to their so-called gods, killing multi-millions and satanic behaviours and horrific rituals. 24. Politicians and stars exposed for fraud, sexual misconduct, cult practices, satanic behaviours, ritual abuse and sacrifice. 25. The GMO kings, Monsanto, crashed and burnt. That was a big plus, far more than people realise. 26. Chinese elders proven fake despite various detailed attempts to seek them out. No one on this planet knows who they are, for good reason. They don't exist. 27. Nibiru, fake asteroids hitting us. RV, GCRs, NESARA, GESARA, OPPT, ZIMs, dongs, dinars, cryptocurrencies, all rendered fake or obsolete. 28. The IMF and the World Bank exposed as financial terrorists, and other organisations will also follow that description. 29. Charities and fake foundations exposed for money laundering, trafficking for sexual and labour purposes, child trafficking for labour, sexual abuse, adrenochrome and ritual sacrifices. 30. We made peace with many of the non-terrestrials here, and work continues on that front. 31. Kim declared America sovereign for the first time in its history, recorded anyway. The last event for tonight is ongoing. 32. But never forget how far you have come as a person or a group. You've all learned the truth to varying degrees of learning, unravelled many of the lies, unveiled many of the masks, and carried on despite threats, ridicule and anger directed at you from so-called friends, family and loved ones. Many have learned how to be more compassionate, more caring, or sharing. You speak of we and us and less of me and I. You've learned how to defend yourselves via shielding, learned how to live and love life again, learned personal responsibility and perspective. People have quit drugs, quit alcohol, quit pharmaceuticals, and stopped suicides. All of these are events bigger than you all thought. Now it's all laid out. Perhaps it will give you all the time to reconsider when is the event happening. The answer is most of it already has. We have much to look forward to as we strip bare the service to self clowns, the special ones, the families and their minions who have consumed our energy and souls in vast quantities. The psychopaths intent on war and destruction. We have an opportunity to create a world in our image, not the Lord and his band of reptilians, but in our image, our way and our path, one that doesn't require harvesting us or killing anyone, one that doesn't require overthrowing governments as they know or knew nothing. A world that doesn't require spying on everyone. A world that doesn't require starving 40% of the people. A world that doesn't have 1.1 billion that lack access to safe drinking water. Or 2.6 billion that lack adequate sanitation. A world that doesn't require killing 49,000 children per day. A world that doesn't require millions living in poverty, where 3 billion people live on less than $2.50 per day, or 1.3 billion live on $1.25 per day, or 1 billion children living in poverty, while death and destruction psychopaths spend 1.7 trillion per year globally on military and weaponry. A world that doesn't require 1.2 or 1.3 billion living without electricity. A world that doesn't require fighting over resources, land or control. It requires none of that. That was their system, not ours. Everyone has a moral and an outright duty to fight, strive, and work hard to create that better world for us all. An obligation to protect and serve humanity. An obligation to protect and serve the children. And lay the foundations for our journey from a childlike backward species requiring others to look after us, to a peaceful, space-faring race, of which we can be deemed a proud and worthy adult species. Peace, prosperity and freedom are not something you wish for. You have forgotten you have the ability to create it. It's up to each and every one of you to create that reality. You wanted events. You've already had them. Now go out and be a part of creating our new world. It's united we stand, divided we fall. This has been part 2 of the 2018 year review. My name is Thomas Williams. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.